What an idea to have Prabhas and Mr. B face off. I want to just say hats off to Telugu cinema.
Interval block till the last portion of the film, I was sucked in.
I was shocked by how much I liked it.
A very violent film. Anupama Chopra liking it is quite the thing.
I wonder often, like, are we just making too many of these? Hey everyone, this is The Late Take and I'm Anupama Chopra.
I'm Anmol Jamwal.
And we have so much to talk about.
Yes,
I feel like I haven't seen you in ages.
Yes, it's I think been more than 2 months. But we came for the big gun, so let's talk about it.
Kalki the big gun?
Yes,
The biggest gun. So I have to say, Anmol, I enjoyed so much of it. I was hooting and cheering for so much of it. But I really wish the storytelling had been more organically woven together. I felt like that's where Nag Ashwin, who is a wonderful director, kind of just had so many strands. वो जो बुनते हैं ना, वो उस बुनने में थोड़ी सी कमी हो.
I 100% agree with it. I don't know about you, but like whenever like a movie with so many stakes at hand and it's like massive, I get nervous before stepping in for it. And I wanted so much of it to be woven together, as you're saying. And I really struggled with the first half of that film. I think it was essentially, ma'am, the sort of abrupt shift of tonality that was constantly happening, where you have that amazing opening with the Kurukshetra war, and then it immediately sort of transitions to this sarcastic right-hand man who's throwing lasers just for fun. These are sequences of depravity, of murder happening, and I mean, spoiler alert, you have characters like Mrunal Thakur being introduced, you have that Rumi character who's giving you an idea of the world. I was hoping to get emotionally sucked in, but these deaths happen and I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And I felt like
you're not invested at that time.
I wasn't invested. And I was thinking that, okay, so it's slowly going to build up to have that same tonality. But what was happening was then Prabhas's character would be introduced, then you would have comedic sequences, and then it would go to Yaskin's evil plan. So it was this constant back and forth that made me think that it's going all over the place. And it made me really struggle to get invested. And
but did you at the interval block?
Interval block till the last portion of the film, I was sucked in.
That's right.
So for me, the issue was that, I understand the storytelling point of introducing Bhairava as a person who's sort of laid back and doesn't know about his purpose. That's the quintessential chosen one story, right?
Yeah.
But for me, a lot of the laid back approach of it should at least hint his purpose, his ultimate purpose. What I'm trying to say is that when you're telling me that he was adopted by Dulquer Salmaan, Dulquer's integration in itself should have some weight or impact. But it's presented in such a casual fashion that payoff.
And that story, Dulquer's story, is actually very grim.
It is, of course.
Because this is a father figure who finally sells you out.
Yeah.
And it should have, and absolutely, and I think every film can be made better with the addition of Dulquer Salmaan.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I think he's just fab.
Yeah.
But here, I just felt like he came and went. And you're right. That is also the way the sequencing in the chronology of events was just like, acha, ye hai flashback. And though they have a character saying कि तुम्हारा flashback इतना sentimental होगा.
Yeah.
I didn't
meta
imagine.
with that.
Yeah. So, but you're having a character say it, but we don't feel it.
Yeah. Ma'am, what I felt was that, say, if the purpose of Disha in the story is for you to give Bhairava a glimpse of the complex, something that he enamors, right? It can then probably, it's something that we already knew. His introduction is his obsession with the complex.
Correct.
That musical sequence did nothing for me.
It did nothing.
So you're just sitting through it, waiting for the film to take itself seriously. This is something that, you know, I felt with, I think we've spoken about this also with movies like Brahmastra or Ravan, these movies that attempt at a parallel with ancient Indian history or mythology and give it a context which is contemporary. They always try to dumb it down initially. And when it does take itself seriously, then you're invested.
Correct.
Hoping, why didn't it carry on with that same tonality?
Yeah, my feeling was, Anmol, that because, as you said, the stakes were so high, that there was a little bit of, in Hindi cinema, what's called padding.
Yeah.
Right? So you had to do the fan service.
Yeah.
Prabhas had to say, I also have a few fans. Right? You had to do this little interlude in the complex, which was what to make Disha look attractive, which she does anyway, but I don't think added anything to the story. There was that row of cameos which only kind of took me out of the narrative, because I was like, oh, there's Ram Gopal Verma, oh, there's S.S. Rajamouli, you know, there's Vijay Devarkonda, all of that. And I felt like he was trying to hedge bets as a storyteller, which he doesn't need to do at all.
Yeah.
Because the actual story just sucked me in, that, like you said, from that interval block to the ending then, and once Mr. Bachchan got into action, then you were just like, and what an idea to have Prabhas and Mr. B face off,
and
which is just fab.
You know, if you look at the film in its entire running time, I think Amitabh Bachchan is the main character. Yeah. At one point of time, I thought he was doing most of the heavy lifting, and what a screen presence, ma'am. I was in awe of him.
Imagine, after all these years.
And to see again, as you said, to imagine Prabhas and Amitabh Bachchan dueling with each other, and his towering presence in itself, it was so beautiful to see. And I was thinking of people who must have grown up watching him, and then to see like years later, 2 years later, see him like be the badass lead again. It was so good.
That's what I mean. Like, and actually, Anmol, it's a film that I felt myself like being so kind of like you felt automatic, like applauding. You know, those what you call the CT worthy moments. You know, even the reveal of Prabhas as the current figure was really exciting. So I think he had so much great material that he didn't need to kind of hedge bets, which is actually what diluted the storytelling. But for me, it was all in all very much worth watching. Very excited to see where this narrative goes, what he does with it, and genuinely a step forward for Indian cinema in every way.
I 100%, and that's what I'm most excited about, the potential that it has now.
The potential it has,
You know, a lot of what people are saying is that essentially this film is a setup to the world, and I think I would much rather have a narrative that probably has a flat screenplay initially and then builds up beautifully for its conclusion rather than the other way around.
Correct.
So I am really looking forward to it, and yes, I was at the 7 a.m. screening hooting and cheering.
Me too. 7:25.
Yeah.
Early for 7:25.
So that's what we're here for, to celebrate these films, and hopeful that, you know, ma'am, I was thinking that you're talking about the meta jokes and the cameos that come in. Right. If we do stray away from it, it's essentially what's going to make us global, I feel like, with these stories. Because then it becomes an inside joke that a lot of people are not in on.
And frankly, it doesn't even add so much, no?
Nothing to the story other than the cheer that will happen in the theater.
Like, wow, there's so-and-so.
S.S. Rajamouli there and him saying 5 years more I can't spend with him. But it's a great joke, but we get it. Joke.
But also, Anmol, it made me feel like I'm immersed in this world. You're convincing me of many worlds that you've built out of your head. That just then reminds me of Bahubali. It takes me somewhere else. Emotionally, I felt like those things didn't land. You know, I wanted to be like completely just in it. And I'm really hoping that in part 2, I hope Deepika gets to do more. You know, she's lovely, but I felt like here she was just a damsel in distress, which is not what we are used to seeing with her at all anymore.
You know, again, with sort of the lack of emotional resonance that you feel, when she is describing her being thrown into the complex by her parents, this is something so heartbreaking. But it's presented and then you move on.
Right.
So I think that's what was slightly something that halted me from being totally invested, was that a lot of these heartbreaking elements are there, but because of the film being a setup for this universe,
correct,
it's just like they have to move on really fast.
Yeah, they're just trying to kind of build out the world.
Yeah.
You know, but look at the visuals, Anmol. I mean, I thought that man who carries the people up to Yaskin's den was just fab.
Beautifully done.
So beautifully done. And even Yaskin's den, him floating and all those things on the walls, it was just lovely.
I'm so curious about his philosophy itself of like what he wants. Is he a nihilistic individual who has a sense so I was thinking then, is he going the Thanos route with...
You're talking about Yaskin?
Yeah, Yaskin.
Right, sorry, I thought you were talking about Nag Ashwin.
No.
Yaskin for sure is Thanosian.
Yeah, yes, so you know how that builds into the narrative for part 2 is something that terribly excites me. So I think it really got people excited after a long time for that big screen experience, and I think it is a step forward.
It is a step forward, and genuinely, before we move to the next title, Anmol, I want to just say hats off to Telugu cinema.
100%.
Look at what they're aspiring for.
I was rooting for this since day one, ma'am. I remember I went for like the Hyderabad live event where they introduced Gucci. Like? It was madness. I mean, you think about like fan followings and you know, they're on another level when it comes to it. So while I was looking at it, I was like, for their entire marketing, they're presenting the production designer, the VFX artist, the technical team. And those are the strong suits of a film like this.
Absolutely.
You know, you're presenting Nitin Zihani Chaudhary, he did the production design, he did Tumbad before this.
Yes.
I'm saying that's so lovely that they're celebrating
you
these
recognize
guys.
Who has actually contributed.
And you know, a lot of people were complaining about that this is probably not good marketing for the film, but these are the high concept films that need this kind of marketing where you go behind the scenes of what went into it. So I was rooting for it, and I'm glad it turned out the way it did.
Good. Yeah, me too, and cannot wait to see part 2. You know, there is this weekend, Anmol, Kill is coming, and embargoes have been lifted. So I've seen the film, and I can just talk a little bit about it. I have to tell you, I was shocked by how much I liked it because
a very violent film. Anupama Chopra liking it is quite the thing, huh?
I was afraid to even go in because that trailer with that man's eye being gouged out was, I said, nahi, ye nahi hoga mujhse. And then I was sitting there, and it's one of those few films that actually have a physical impact. You know, like your body language changes because you're so stressed and you're so tense, and then you're cheering, and then you're wondering, what are you cheering for? Who are you sympathizing with? So can't recommend it enough. I think you're going to enjoy it too.
No. I am a sucker for action films.
You're good with violence.
Even if it's wafer thin plot, you're saying that John Wick's dog was harmed and he goes on a killing spree, I'm in. So if this was unabashed, unapologetic action, I'm going to be seated on 5th July. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Nice. The one I have missed because I was in the US for my daughter's graduation is Chandu Champion.
Yes.
What was that like?
I have to commend Kartik especially for the amount he's invested, not even physically, on just emotionally, how draining this role may have been. And it's inspiring, ma'am. The only thing that I would say is that it has a very predictable tone of how most biopics tend to become, where an underdog story leads to some form of redemption and then obviously hurdles that come their way, and it's a beautiful story all in all.
But you can see what's coming.
You could see everything that's coming. And Kartik really puts forth a really understated performance, and I think that is something that he wanted to flex. And I think Kabir Khan extracted that out of him as well. I wished it had something more with respect to the interactions with the people he's inspired by, or who come almost as a hurdle in his final goal. I wished for that. I think, Kabir Khan especially excels in, there's one beautiful war sequence in the film, which is this 8-minute sort of 1917-esque shot.
Right, the continuous shot.
Where it made me think that Kabir Khan is like an action director,
Right.
And he
did do the first
Ek
Tiger.
And what was so visceral about that sequence, it almost became diluted with the human storytelling. So, you know, what was there technically and so novel about that particular sequence, I felt sort of went missing in the narrative, the screenplay. Full kudos to like Kartik especially. I feel like he really gave it his all. It was like, you know, when I saw Shrikant, I was really rooting for the story, and then 100 points for Rajkumar, but you understood the beats and where it was going.
It's too familiar.
Too familiar.
Maybe, Anmol, I wonder often, like, are we just making too many of these?
Probably that is, ma'am.
You know, there's just fatigue now.
Fatigue and getting stale. I felt like, I think the same thing happened with Maidan as well.
Yeah.
You know, people know the beats of it, and then I guess because from 2015 to 19, we had a lot of these films. Post the pandemic, people are just not interested, maybe. But again, I must say, like, I was clapping for the effort, especially.
Yeah.
So
how lovely.
That was.
Yeah, but that's great. I mean, the fact that a star like him would put himself out to really commit so heavily to a film is wonderful.
And it is praiseworthy, you know, 100%.
Yeah, and I'm going to catch it as soon as I can. What did you think of Munjya?
Munjya is something that, again, I was very excited by, because I am interested on what Maddock is doing with its universe.
Yeah.
There were parts of it that I really loved. Again, it's parts where the film took the theme itself very seriously.
Yeah.
So when it is a deep dive on the folklore, the Konkan coast, and a story that I've been told in my comments is much more grave.
Really?
Than what is told. It's a very sanitized version that you hear, that this, pardon my French, horny ghost is running around and leching at munnis.
Yeah.
It is representative of a community where the biggest fear was dying alone. So the stakes itself
are
very high. So rather than it just being frivolous horror comedy, what a lot of people are saying is that if it really took it seriously, this could have been a very compelling horror film.
Right, which it isn't.
Which it isn't.
Yeah,
it's
because it leans into comedy.
Fun, and you know, I actually laughed in a lot of sequences. I preferred the comedy over films like Bhedia.
Correct.
But I just felt like I was getting a little tired also of the genre itself and the form it's taken.
Did you find the character interesting?
I found the character very interesting. The kid, not the ghost.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because for me, the CGI character was just not... I was like, but you could have done anything. Why is he like a golem gone wrong? You know? But I find this director, Aditya, is you know, he did Zombie, which I just love.
Yeah.
And I find like he has a real talent for staging certain kind of... You know, there is a creepiness, so he has a talent for doing that. But yeah, I felt like it just got diluted.
See, when you have that beautiful setup of that psychotic child who is ready to kill his sister as sacrifice, okay, this is probably the most disturbing opening you can do.
Absolutely.
And then in the climax, when the ghosts are just transferring and it turns into a comedy of errors, then at one point you're like, okay, I'm not as invested as I was initially. So that was my only thing. I really, you know, I really love the production company.
For backing
Abhay Verma as a lead.
I think he's lovely.
He's so good. For the business this film has done, I really feel for that story in itself, I was really commending it.
Yeah.
But I wish that the universe doesn't get diluted so much where, you know, it's just fluff. Because
so it's too much comedy and not enough horror.
It isn't. The story itself is not... you know, ma'am, if you are extracting from folklore, I feel like it should have more depth in its ultimate final act.
Yeah.
Which I feel Stree did really well. And I'm telling you, ma'am, it all has to do with Raj and DK. They are not writers anymore after that film. There is a certain sense of the balance that they got right on point with that first film.
Between the sort of the lightness and the darkness. Yeah.
And I felt like that's dissipated as the installments have increased.
Yeah. No, Stree is definitely the high bar that the rest of the films haven't quite managed. But let's see, Stree 2 is coming. Who knows? Also, did you see Inside Out 2?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Isn't that lovely?
I fell in love with it.
Did you cry?
I cried. So yes.
I love that you're a crier.
Yes, yes. Fully invested in stories like that. And it tapped into a young teenage me that I didn't know would be sobbing eventually. It was beautiful, ma'am. And you know, a lot of people, as we were, I think, initially discussing before the cameras rolled, was that people complain about the broad strokes of storytelling and how mental health is way more nuanced than it is. But I think it communicates effectively with those broad strokes so well.
As it should, because it's also talking to people of a certain age, right? I mean, the Pixar movies are, of course, for a broad demographic. I mean, they speak to adults as much as they do to children, but I think it's so important. Like in my screening, there were friends and family, and you know, there were young boys. One was like, I think 10 and another one was 14. And I was like, what are they taking away from this? Especially because it's a girl as the protagonist, you know, but they loved it. And they really connected with the idea of anxiety and understanding what it does. So I feel like if you've landed those very complicated things, it's okay.
It's done its job.
Yeah, it's done its job.
Like, ma'am, sometimes, you know, you can't describe if you're organically, immediately, like sort of emotionally resonating with the story.
Yeah.
I can't create a science behind it. It spoke to me.
Yeah.
With it being an animated film, presumably for kids with a female protagonist.
Yeah.
It hit me.
Yeah.
And I think it's reflective of great storytelling.
It is great storytelling. I loved it, and I hope that they continue to make their magic.
Yes,
100%. You know, because they're so wonderful. Should we look at comments?
Yes, yes. Okay, so the first comment is by Robo69. He says, while both Kalki and Brahmastra suffered from screenplay issues, the difference is that Kalki had a slow pacing and had some unnecessary scenes and characters like Roxy. While in Brahmastra, it lost its core plot and became a straight-up love story. I think what I did resonate with, or what kept me interested till the end with Kalki, was that its core didn't go away.
Yeah.
Brahmastra has its own issues with its dialogues and what it eventually became. But I felt like both were efforts in the right direction.
Absolutely.
I must say, ma'am. You know, Brahmastra gets a lot of flack, but I must say that what Ayan was trying to do, it sort of got lost in translation. I do agree with its dialogues and it being far too simplistic in its conclusion.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Kalki, the fact that they've created that parallel with the Kurukshetra war and the Mahabharata characters, it brings up so many possibilities.
Absolutely.
That I'm very excited.
I'm very excited. No, and truthfully, for me, the villain of the piece, which is the key of cinema like this, right? I mean, Yaskin was so much more powerful and more impactful than the baddies in Brahmastra.
Who were the baddies?
Who were the baddies? I don't know. You know, Moni Roy. You know, all those guys. I mean, they didn't hang together for a fraction of a second like Yaskin did in just minutes. How much screen time did Kamal Hassan have?
Just 2 scenes.
Yeah, just 2 scenes. And yet you can feel that, oh man, this is going to get nasty. So I felt that really, and it's only as good as the villain.
True, you know, I say that for a lot of these spy universe films as well.
Exactly.
If the villain's on point, then it's an exciting film.
Then it's exciting. That's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, you got this.
This is from Nitin Patel 1039, and he says at age 81, when you've got absolutely nothing to prove to anyone, he has given it all. My goodness, Amitji, what are you? This is his best performance since Pink in recent time. Every scene, he is just perfect man for the perfect role. I agree. I think at 81, when you absolutely have nothing to prove, like you've
done everything.
You've done everything. Like you were the one-man industry, you know, and still to bring that gravitas and Anmol, that kind of ache. You know, there's just ache in him, like ache at his mistakes, at the life he's had to endure, at his own immortality. And that depth wasn't there in any of the others. And
how he's constantly following Deepika.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can see what is it called? Paschatap.
Paschatap, exactly. Regret and penance. Bilkul. And it's the eyes. I mean, in so many of the scenes, his face is covered. Yeah. It's just the eyes and that voice. And the sadness in it is just, I thought he was spectacular.
Man, his opening is his song.
Yeah.
It's so beautifully sung by him.
Yeah. No, he
can do everything.
He can do anything, and I cannot wait to see what happens with him. And I have to tell you, I felt like a giddy young kid when I was on the sets of the film and I got to pose with this massive gigantic statue of Mr. Bachchan. Yeah. I was like, this is my whole life, you know, in one visual. This is it, you know, because he was so good. Yeah. This was fun, Anmol, and we have lots to look forward to.
Lots to look forward to.
So many movies coming up.
Yes.
And exciting times ahead. And thank you.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you.